Welcome, traveler. Tonight, we drift into something that should never have been possible, a ripple born from a forgotten world, turning empires inside out that you're alone in the comms cradle of a relic scout ship, orbiting the dead edge of Sector A81. Stars are thin here, like sparse campfires dotting a frozen desert. No traffic, no chatter. You were mapping ion storms for an insurance conglomerate too cheap to send drones. Routine, boring, mildly humiliating. Then the signal comes that it's short, precise, and far too clean. Point one packet. Human standard encryption? Yes, that kind of human. Earth human. Obsolete, clumsy, insecure. Yet somehow, it pierces 6 layers of galactic net protocols like a hot spoon through frozen algae paste that IT simply reads. Earth // Council Measure 876. C // vote. You pause. Maybe chuckle. Must be a prank. An old Earth meme echoing through deep space? But then the ship jolts, gently. You've never felt a diplomatic relay initiate outside a vote session, let alone one triggered by a ghost civilization that hasn't shown up to council meetings in, forever. You double-check the header. It's authenticated. Time-stamped. Galactic Council Core Seal recognized and validated by the Master Mesh Grid. Which is not just unlikely. It's forbidden. Earth wasn't even on the Council's voter rolls. Still, the ship's AI, bless its non-sentient heart, logs the message as a formal veto submission. That means central servers already accepted it. That means this changes things. You glance at the screen again. Vote? No explanation. No delegation. Just refusal, wrapped in procedural gold that, let's be honest, you'd probably get vaporized within 5 minutes of stepping into actual interstellar politics. But luckily, you're not on the floor of the council assembly. You're just watching, quietly, as bureaucratic entropy starts to crack the ceiling of the known galaxy. Already, you're getting priority pings, level red alerts, administrative chatter and panicked, half-coherent council dialects. Something about immediate session override. Something about Earth codes reactivated. You sit back in your chair, the kind with that one spring that squeaks every third lean. You feel like a kid who just tipped over the first domino in a billion-tile cosmic maze. And then, the vote tally updates that a floating council summary window drifts into view, with all the polish of high diplomacy. Measure 876, C. Emergency militarization of the outer core systems. Total votes cast, 271. Required majority, 181. Result: rejected. Final vote: 180 yes/91 no. Note: Earth veto engaged. Measure nullified. Session terminated. You blink. You rub your eyes. Earth's one no just nuked a vote that would have mobilized the core fleet, triggering the biggest interstellar military deployment since the Glaxon Ascension War. And Earth wasn't even invited to the table. Outside your window, a comet drifts lazily across the starscape. It's peaceful, tranquil, the kind of beauty that really shouldn't be interrupted by constitutional crises. You forward the signal to higher authority, protocol demands it, but your fingers hesitate. This is going to make you famous, or fired, or dead, possibly all three, in that order. Still, curiosity itches under your skin like a bad neural patch. How did Earth's vote count? Who let them back in? Even the ship AI seems confused. You catch it running diagnostics on the constitutional net rules, like a librarian finding graffiti in a sacred scroll. And here's the kicker. The signature is valid. Not just a fluke. Not hacked. Not tampered. IT was designed this way. Somewhere, deep in the bones of the Council's foundation code, Earth still has a seat, and someone on Earth just remembered how to use it. You crack your knuckles. This just got interesting. And somewhere, probably deep in some floating monolith tower far away, a bunch of very nervous diplomats are about to lose their collective minds. All right, close the airlock. Tonight, we enter a memory the galaxy tried very hard to forget that you're knee-deep in procedural records now. The good stuff. The crusty digital archives that smell, figuratively, like burnt ozone and bureaucratic sweat. You weren't trained for this level of admin archaeology, but the Council's legal framework is as open source as its paranoia allows. Earth wasn't even on the last 6 interstellar voter rosters. You know this. Everyone knows this. In fact, Earth never even showed up to claim a seat. Too primitive, too chaotic, too Terran. The polite term in council circles was pre-cooperative species. The impolite term? Liability. Yet, there it is. Their vote just nullified one of the most ambitious strategic initiatives the Council has pushed in a century, and the protocols accepted no challenge. No delay, no override attempt. You send a cautious ping to the local registrar node, which confirms the devastating truth. Earth still exists on the galactic voter table, under a legacy placeholder tag dormant Observer Seat 92. They were never removed, just politely ignored for 300 years. The packet you received came through a diplomatic channel so old it's no longer documented in current training manuals. Something called the Unity Conduit, deprecated just after the Orion Mediation Accords, before the modern voting mesh even rolled out. Only civilizations marked as founders had access to it. Apparently, Earth was one of them. You lean back, suddenly chilled despite the recycled air. Earth, in its long, loud silence, hadn't left the stage. They just never bothered walking into the spotlight. You get your first return message. Not from Earth. Don't be ridiculous. But from a mid-tier sub-commander on the 4th Deliberative. Ring. Her message is brief. There has been no formal delegation from Terra in over 318 cycles. This vote is invalid. Please advise. You almost reply with, then why did your own protocol engine log it as binding? But you don't. Instead, you attach the raw packet logs, timestamped, encoded, verified by 3 cross-network standards. You also send a small emoji. A shrugging octopus. Just to keep things friendly. Moments later, the response window explodes with chatter. Channels you don't have clearance for start lighting up. Someone in protocol enforcement initiates a legacy compliance review, a rare and deeply feared process that combs foundational laws for exactly this kind of unpatched madness. Turns out the galaxy, for all its grandeur, runs on legal spaghetti. And Earth? Earth just tugged the wrong noodle. Outside your viewport, your scout ship quietly drifts. The stars don't care about laws, but the Council does. And this vote has already broken several standing agreements. You imagine the Chamber of Species, glowing blue under its glass dome, suddenly erupting in multilingual outrage. You picture arrogant, squid-faced senators and glowing thorax aristocrats, pounding their voting pads while some poor intern tries to unmute the quorum beacon. They'll say this is an error, a ghost vote, a clerical hiccup, but in the deepest part of your gut, you already know the truth. This wasn't an accident. Someone on Earth remembered the rules better than the rule writers. Some galactic historians still argue whether Earth's exclusion from recent council decades was intentional or neglectful. A few fringe theorists claim it was Earth's own choice, opting out after the first contact embarrassment. You know the story, where one human representative punched a Xerxes ambassador for calling her adorably carbonic. Cultural misunderstandings, sure, but also very on-brand. Still, that doesn't explain the vote. Or the silence. Why now? Why? This measure? You start scanning the data trail again. The vote wasn't just well-timed, it was surgical. Measure 876. C would have deployed AI-controlled peacekeepers to the outer core systems, consolidating power in the hands of the old-world species, most of whom still treat Earth as either a joke or a cautionary tale. But that no cut the entire plan off at the knees, which brings you back to the question buzzing inside your brain like a drunken firefly. Who the hell on Earth still knew how to do this? The vote wasn't just a message. It was a door creaking open, and behind it, maybe nothing. Or maybe someone with a very long memory. You finally run a full legal backtrace. The result nearly makes you choke on your nutrient gel. Clause 88A. Any founding participant in the Proto-Cooperative Alliance may invoke emergency veto authority on planetary-level legislation affecting galactic borders, provided the invocation is made through Unity Conduit protocols using authentication methods. Registered at founding. It's still active, never removed. Hidden under half a millennium of constitutional upgrades and messy, undocumented patches, Earth's veto wasn't a glitched, it was a goddamn masterstroke. And whoever sent it knew exactly what they were doing. The lights on your console flicker, not because of a power surge, but because some automated process deep within the council's legal cortex just choked on its own logic loop. You watch in real time as command protocols across dozens of systems freeze, stall, or crash entirely. Messages come in from across the grid. Military fleets, bureaucratic AI cores, economic regulators, all waiting on the execution of Measure 876C. All now, confused. The vote read no, just one word. But in the right system? In the right format? It's a hammer. You sit forward as more error codes scroll across your secondary display. Fleet mobilizations held in stasis. Planetary defense installations pausing their warm-up sequences. Treaties suspended until the vote can be clarified. You wonder, how do you clarify a monosyllable? Earth didn't send a memo. No justification. No context. Just no. And the system obeyed. You think back to the sheer scale of it. How the council vote process functions like a living neural network. Every node trusting the others, all operating under consensus assumptions. The problem with that? One well-placed contradiction can scramble the whole network like an egg in a gravity malfunction. And this wasn't just contradiction. It was authority. You didn't know the vote counted. Neither did the current council, apparently. But the system remembered that IT always remembers that a ping lights up, this time from the Lockkeeper archives. Not a public channel. This one's routed through an encryption lattice you've never seen before. You're not even sure your clearance is high enough to receive it. But it doesn't stop the feed from coming through that it's a single image in old Earth-style voting console. The kind used in pre-space planetary elections. Slightly cracked. Dusty. But still active. The screen reads, "Your vote has been recorded. Thank you for participating in Galactic governance." There's a timestamp. You squint that IT was sent from Earth. Last 18 hours. You suck in a breath. Not a relay. Not a spoofed ID. A real, physical interface, located somewhere on Earth, logged into. A system most of the galaxy doesn't even know still exists. And someone pressed no? Someone who knew what that would do. The magnitude is hard to explain. You're watching the outer edge of the galaxy react like a body experiencing nerve shock. The ripple effect is stunning. Minor civilizations who align themselves with the core initiative begin withdrawing their support. Nervous planetary governments issue neutral statements. The Ilari Commerce Triumvirate unilaterally freezes all trade negotiations. And on the official council feeds? Silence. The kind of silence that only happens when too many powerful beings are screaming at once behind locked doors. There's no emergency address. No denial. No countermeasure. Because how do you counteract a perfectly legal vote? Somewhere. In your logs, a harmless phrase from the core protocol guidebook drifts up, as if mocking you. In the event of legacy invocation, all active measures are to be suspended until council review. No exceptions. Well, here it is. No exceptions. You start digging. Not out of duty anymore, but hunger. You want to know who did it. Not just what Earth said, but who said it. You reroute your comms interface and search the registration logs. Tied to Unity conduit access. Most are ancient, dormant, flagged, or linked to dead species. But one glows green. Terminal. Unity. Terra. 001. Active. Verified. Last used. 18 hours ago. Then you see it. Registered user. M. Reyes. Title. Galactic Liaison. Earth Observer Post. Retired. Status. Deceased. Declared 217 years ago. You exhale a single, awed breath. Galactic Liaison. Retired. Deceased. 2 centuries gone. And yet, her credentials still work. You can't help the small laugh that escapes your lips. Imagine that. Humanity, the forgotten child of the stars, left the council and never changed the locks. The galaxy moved on. Earth never did. Some claim that human systems are notoriously insecure. But maybe that's the trick. Everyone expects mess. No one suspects. Precision and Reyes? Whoever she was, she left a key under the welcome mat. The open-ended question now echoes through your ship like a haunting lullaby. Was this a one-time event or a beginning? Some galactic historians argue that all empires fall because of war, or corruption, or stagnation. But you're beginning to wonder if the real danger is simpler. They forget who still has a vote. Your ship's gravity plating hums softly as you float above the cracked surface of history, one document at a time. The override command was real. The signature verified. The vote cast. And now, It's time to figure out how. You begin the archival dive, not the sanitized summaries. Those are written for ambassadors with short attention spans and longer egos. No, you go into the raw stuff, pre-standardization language blocks, cultural edge case codices, and council formation era loophole manifests. Your screen scrolls with laws that were written when faster than light was just a theory and species still argued whether democracy was worth the paperwork. Most of it is bureaucratic mulch. But buried halfway through an appendix labeled Foundational Equity Governance, Clause Nexus Beta, is a line that makes your pulse skip. Founding species may establish one permanent remote vote conduit, location-bound and immune to systemic expiry. You double blink. Location-bound, as in anchored, the Unity conduit on Earth isn't just a terminal, it's a legal monument. A permanent fixture in the galactic framework. Protected, untouchable most. Founding civilizations dismantled theirs centuries ago after digitizing their sovereignty. Why keep a physical point of failure? But Earth, in its usual uncooperative charm, must have left theirs gathering dust under a volcano or in an abandoned missile silo somewhere. You start compiling a list of possible locations based on old human archives, Geneva, Quito, MT Erebus, some crater in the Mojave. Who knows? Here's the wild part. The clause makes it clear, as long as the terminal exists, Earth retains its emergency vote. The system can't forget it, can't deny it, which means Earth never needed to attend meetings. It just had to survive, somewhere. In the back of your mind, a half-formed joke emerges. The most powerful button in the galaxy is in an old garage in Ohio. Not that far off, apparently. But the real kicker? Earth didn't just press the button. It waited centuries, hundreds of years of council laws, wars, treaties, scandals, all passed without interference. Earth stayed quiet through it all. They didn't speak during the Grell War. They didn't comment during the Ether floods. They didn't veto when the council tried to regulate stellar birth rates. But now, they say no. To this measure. You open up the voting record. Measure 876, C.U. Hadn't paid much attention to the specifics. Just another contain and stabilize act designed to militarize trade routes along the unstable edges of the outer core systems. But the fine print. It authorized full AI enforcement rights, not just tactical drones, autonomous judgment protocols. Entire fleets run by logic engines with no organics in the loop. And worse, any non-member system resisting would be forcibly realigned. The language is sterile. The implications are not to Earth, whose history includes things like colonialism, unilateral policing, and data manipulation empires. It must have read like a nightmare returning for a sequel. And they said no. A clear, precise, surgical no. Some galactic philosophers still argue whether that no was philosophical, legal, or strategic. You're starting to think it was personal. You rub your temples, your ship dimming lights automatically to reduce strain. A kindness coded in by engineers who probably never imagined you'd be unraveling millennia-old treaties in your pajamas while eating protein cubes shaped like extinct Terran animals. Outside, the stars blur past. You engage low-speed drift, letting the ship coast through a dead nebula field that once hosted a forgotten skirmish between species no one remembers. You're not headed anywhere in particular. You're thinking, pacing mentally, because something doesn't add up. If Earth had this power, why didn't anyone else know? Why didn't the Council scrub it? Why didn't the protocols evolve past it? You dive deeper. This time, you follow the name. M. Reyes. She wasn't just a galactic liaison. You pull up a personnel file, an archive due to the vote's activation. She was one of the original Earth delegates during the formation epoch. She helped write the clause, and right before she retired, she registered the Unity terminal under her own signature. A private legacy vote, bound to her DNA, verified via retinal key, and stored in the biosphere of the terminal itself, which means she never really left. Her presence, legally, never ended. And the only way to nullify Earth's veto rights, destroy the terminal, physically, which, under Council law, would constitute an act of planetary war. You sit back, heart thudding. Earth engineered. A perfect checkmate, and the Council walked right into it, blind, arrogant, and very, very vulnerable. The first archivist response hits your inbox like a slap from a feathered glove. Elegant, formal, and bristling with repressed panic. The invocation of Clause Nexus Beta is under review. Please refrain from further dissemination of this event until the High Codex Tribunal has reconvened. We remind you that misinterpretation of foundational law carries consequences. You chuckle softly. Misinterpretation, in archivist dialect, is council speak for, "We have no idea what's happening, but we'd rather you didn't tell anyone we don't know." You send them a polite thumbs up and continue downloading every copy of the lawbooks before someone decides they should retroactively explode. It's always the same story with the council. So many species, so many eras, each adding new laws on top of old ones without ever fully deprecating the bones. Galactic law isn't code. It's fossilized spaghetti. And Earth? Earth found a noodle buried so deep it practically counted as sacred text. You imagine the archivists now, long-necked, ceremonial-robed, furiously scrolling through ancient PDF files and muttering, "It can't be that, Reyes." But it is. And worse, it turns out Reyes wasn't the only one who knew the clause existed. Reports start pouring in, not from Earth, but from other species-independent historians. The Inkari Library Collective, the Talari Memory Chorus, even the Ortborn Echoes, the galaxy's most reclusive archivists, release a decades-old treatise that mentions Earth's persistent legal shadow. Apparently, it was a known myth that Earth had seeded a legacy veto into the bones of the Council. Everyone thought it was folklore, until the vote passed through. And now? Panic. The Council calls an emergency session, but even that move is tangled. The Assembly Hall is overwhelmed with contradictory input. Delegates from the core worlds demand an investigation. Fringe species call for audits. And more than one military bloc requests authorization to neutralize the source. You know what that means, that they're thinking of invading Earth.to delete the vote.to destroy the Unity conduit. The logic is seductive. Remove the terminal, remove the problem. But there's a catch, and it's not a small one. Clause 88, buried next to Nexus Beta like a legally radioactive sibling. Any interference with a planetary legacy terminal shall be considered an act of systemic violation, equivalent to war against a founding civilization. That's not a metaphor, that's legal language for Earth can declare war on the galaxy if you try anything. And more unsettling still, there's no expiration clause. Earth could be half underwater, run by sentient goats, or a nature preserve for ex-politicians. It doesn't matter. The moment you breach the terminal zone, it's war. And so the Council stalls, frozen by its own foundational scripture. From your window, you watch as a passing courier ship burns silent trails through the thin starlight. The galaxy doesn't care about the Council's paralysis. It spins on, but systems are already feeling the ripple. On Trellis Station, where trade hubs were meant to militarize, all shipments are grounded. On Starry Prime, orbital defense AI are frozen mid-update, waiting for a command sequence that will never come. And you? You just sit back and sip something too sweet and suspiciously green, listening to the galaxy hold its breath. Then comes the weirdest ping of all, from the planet Glask, capital of the bureaucratic unification front, a planet known for its obsessive record-keeping and six-headed legal dragons. The message is simple. Did Earth just save the outer core from militarized AI? You don't reply, because that's the real question, isn't it? Some historians argue Earth always acted irrationally, chaotic good, at best. But others suggest something different. Earth doesn't move often, but when it does, it moves with purpose. That you're starting to believe it. Because, no, wasn't. Random.it wasn't a tantrum.it was surgical, measured, timed. Earth let the Council drift into arrogance. Let them forget where the bones were buried, and then pressed the one button that made everything stop. It's not just that Earth still had a vote, that it's that Earth waited. And now the galaxy's most powerful civilization is caught between pride and protocol. They can't strike, can't ignore it, can't undo it, because Earth said no, and the stars obeyed. Out in the void, political panic has a strange sound. It's not shouting. It's not sirens, it's silence, wrapped in compression static, followed by frantic bursts of encrypted chatter that no one dares decrypt in public. You imagine the chamber. Now, 12 tiers of dignitaries and delegates, each clutching their dignity like a broken umbrella in a solar storm. You can almost hear the scratchy scrape of ceremonial robes on polished stone, the whispered arguments behind soundproofed council domes. It's funny. Earth didn't even send anyone. And yet, everyone's reacting as if a Terran dreadnought just decloaked in orbit. The Council emergency session convenes at Orbital Tier 9, a level normally reserved for first contact crises and full-scale civilization collapses. You tap into the open access stream. Not that it gives you anything useful. The visuals are a deliberate blur, the audio compressed to political soup. Still, you pick out fragments. Unauthorized activation of legacy protocol. Who maintains the Earth connection? This was meant to be obsolete. You almost feel bad for them. Almost. Because at the heart of it all, this isn't just about law, it's about memory. For centuries, the galaxy treated Earth like a fossil. A quirky, unstable curiosity. Useful in theory, embarrassing in practice. Half the council chambers still have jokes etched into the walls about the species that nuked itself before it even left orbit. You recall a transcript once, archived, from a centuries-old session. One delegate referred to Earth as the over-emotional dirtball with a god complex. Another mocked their reliance on instinct over logic. Well, instinct just vetoed their war plan. You flip through old debate. Logs. Earth's absence wasn't ever formalized. There were no declarations, no exile, just dismissal, a cultural shrug that grew into policy over time. Earth was non-cooperative, politically immature, so the galaxy moved on, wrote them out like a character no one wanted to write for anymore, and now they're back in the story with one line. No. You forward a private message to an old contact on the Venari Judiciary Circuit, a neutral planet full of truth-obsessed archivists with a flair for flair. She replies within seconds. You saw it too? Oh stars. I always thought it was a myth. Reyes's protocol. They left it in the foundational ledger. Why 876, see though? Why this vote? You type. Because it was about force, not peace. Earth knows that story. And then, something strange happens. In the lower forums. Places diplomats pretend don't exist. There's a spike in anonymous activity. Threads speculating on Earth's motivations. Videos analyzing their legal resurrection. Conspiracy theories, yes. But some. Thoughtful point. One thread catches your eye. What if Earth never left? What if they've been watching this whole time? Another reply follows. Then we should all be very afraid. Or very grateful that IT hits you then. This isn't just a crisis. It's a narrative rupture. The kind of story the galaxy hasn't had in a long time. A mystery. A shadowy player re-entering the stage. No fleets. No ambassadors. No ultimatums. Just a button press. And for all the council's pomp and pretense, for all its logic, structure, and law, there's nothing they can do now that won't confirm Earth's power. Silence? That's admission. Action? That's war. And they are not ready for war. Not against a planet they haven't studied since the era of steam. You receive another file. This one untagged, anonymous. You scan it out of habit. A grainy imaged AN Earth City. No timestamp. No coordinates. But you recognize it. Burnt orange sky. Tall towers. Ivy-wrapped concrete bones. No neon. No ads. A strange mix of old world and post-collapse serenity. The caption reads, "We're not gone. Just quiet. And we still vote." You sit there for a long time. N01's invaded Earth in centuries. N01's thought to. And now, no one dares. Because that quiet little blue world just made the most powerful statement in galactic history. And they didn't raise their voice. They whispered. And everyone listened. The galaxy turns, but the center has shifted. You can feel it, like gravity reorienting. Messages from remote sectors echo the same tension. Leaders hesitating before issuing commands. Trade AI asking for human context definitions, subroutes. Recalibrating traffic away from Earth-adjacent sectors, just in case. And now the Council wants to know how it happened. Not just why the vote counted, but who made it happen. Enter you. You're summoned. Not physically, of course. You're no diplomat. You're a field analyst sitting in a borrowed scout vessel running on backup thrusters and T-level coffee rations. But your logs? They're the cleanest record of the event. A crystalline chain of custody, straight from the Unity conduit to the Galactic mesh grid. You get routed into a joint session with something called the Procedural Emergency Subcouncil. You didn't know that was a thing. Turns out they meet exactly once every 600 years. A reassuring sign. Clearly, your holostream flickers. 12 representatives. Mixed species. Mixed patients. Point 1 speaks first, an Everothi delegate. With translucent skin and a voice like dry ice across glass. Explain to us how Earth accessed the Unity line. You do. You tell them everything. The Reyes Protocol, the Legacy Clause, the buried terminal rights, the unrevoked registration. You try to sound like you're not the most shocked person in the system. Point 1 by 1. The delegates glance at each other in awkward silence. Then a Kalori speaker leans forward. He has the face of someone used to being obeyed and the tone of someone who's just realized he locked his keys inside his warship. Why did no one notice this before? There it is, the real question. You pause, long enough to be polite, but not long enough to seem smug. Because the law wasn't broken, just unremembered. No one likes that answer. But no one contradicts it, either. You catch flickers of side-channel chatter. One phrase keeps recurring in varying dialects. Reyes failsafe. Apparently, her name wasn't as forgotten as the council wanted to believe. Whispers surfaced that she once threatened to build 10 terminals before settling on one. A bluff, perhaps, or maybe a warning. Some say she called the Unity vote a fire alarm, not a throne. And Earth? Well, maybe they finally smelled smoke. Then comes the bombshell from one of the subdelegates, an elderly voice from the Granari ecosphere, whose species supposedly remembers everything they've ever seen. There's record of a second clause, hidden, not in the archives, stored on Earth. The council freezes, because that would mean Earth didn't just use their vote. They may have rewritten the rules in case this day ever came. You're dismissed. Soon after, cordially, formally, but not before one delegate privately pings you with a question. Do you believe Earth wants to rejoin us? You think, not about what to say, but about what you've seen, the vote, the silence, the surgical precision, the absence of any follow-up. Then you answer, no, I think Earth wanted us to stop. And they did, but there's no comfort in that, because now, everyone is looking back over their shoulder. You get a new feed soon after, an intercepted diplomatic transcript from the Council's Internal Inquiry Division. It contains one particularly damning line. Humanity left a fingerprint on the inside of the lock. They never intended to return, only to remind us the door was never sealed. You close the file, there's nothing more to say. The damage is done. The vote passed. The plan failed. The Council fractured. And Earth? Still silent, still watching. Some galactic historians argue that silence is consent. Others, that it's guilt. But you? You're starting to wonder, what if silence is strategy? So you dive deeper. Not into the Council archives. They're a mess of redacted logs and political hot glue, but into the unofficial sources. That glorious tangle of fringe historians, rogue AI, ex-diplomats with too much wine and too few secrets. And one particular forum, simply called the Dust Protocol, that it's a gathering place for conspiracy scholars, legal archivists, and the occasional synthetic consciousness with trust issues. You search, Earth, vote, Reyes, hits, 9203. You narrow by relevance. You spot a thread titled, They Mocked Us as Primitive. Why that was their first mistake. The opening post is brutal. In 2421, Earth applied for full council integration. They were laughed out of the hall. One delegate reportedly asked if Earth had brought a translator for their emotions. Another suggested they return when they stopped setting themselves on fire over resource disputes. Earth never applied again. And then, paragraphs later, it drops a claim. Before Reyes retired, she left something behind in the open council logs. A single sentence. Missed by most. Ignored by all. You pull it up. Council session transcript / year 2433 / adjournment notes to them. Reyes, Galactic Liaison, Rhett, we're not leaving. We're just stepping back. You'll know when we're watching. You'll know because you'll stop breathing for a moment and won't know why. Poetic, terrifying, and apparently not taken seriously. You read the responses. Even then, some suspected Earth had embedded backdoor authority. Others called it bluff. Or, worse, performance art. But now, the council has stopped breathing, and suddenly, people are remembering. You access a recording from that era, old, degraded, full of static. It shows Reyes standing alone on a dais surrounded by 37 species, each more bizarre than the last. She looks calm, not defiant, not angry, just tired. The way someone looks when they know they're about to become irrelevant and decide to make sure no one forgets them anyway. The speech is short. The message, crystal. Consensus is not peace if it's built on erasure. Earth remembers. They didn't even bother to archive her full address. It's only available because a janitor drone accidentally backed up security footage, but the words hit harder now, especially when your inbox pings again. This time from a private server marked quorum_shadow_subnet, an emergency council network, never meant to be exposed to non-delegates. The message is unsanctioned. Blunt. There's talk of isolating Earth, of making sure this never happens again. Burn the terminal. Collapse the legal clause. Erase the blueprint. We need to. No. Does Earth still have allies? You stare at the words, because that's the real fear, isn't it? Not that Earth spoke, but that someone might listen. Rumors swirl. Fleets that never answered to the Council now drift closer to Sol. Independent AI collectives, thought to be neutral, begin issuing encryption keys compatible with Earth's obsolete systems. And the outer core worlds? They're quiet. Too quiet. Not just because the vote froze the militarization protocol, but because they're relieved. You pull up civilian sentiment trackers. On 27 fringe worlds, the story is spreading like wildfire. Translations of Earth's vote. Reyes quote, "The myth of the sleeping power with a single word still sharp enough to draw blood. One Talari public broadcast goes viral. The council came with weapons. Earth sent punctuation. You can't help but laugh, and then a chill, because that's exactly what happened. Not a war, not a threat, not a vote. The most mundane, civilized, human act possible, and it changed everything. Some galactic historians say Earth was always too unpredictable to trust. But you're starting to wonder if unpredictability was the point. Maybe that's what Reyes meant. Maybe that's why they laughed her off. Because the galaxy wasn't afraid of Earth's chaos, IT was afraid of Earth learning how to aim it. You float through the outer reaches of the local comnet, watching system after system recalibrate itself. Not because of a war, but because of a word. No, that's all it took that you've started seeing the effect firsthand. Transports rerouting. To avoid council enforcement zones. Military deployments on hold, not because of fear, but because their commanders aren't sure which laws are valid anymore. And now, the weight of that no is sinking in. Treaties meant to be enforced by AI-controlled patrol fleets are unraveling. Resource-sharing pacts built on assumed council dominance are being redrafted overnight. Even the most aggressive species, the Urellan bloodlines, the Kark ascendancy, the Miralin clusters, have paused, not because they respect Earth, but because they're afraid Earth's next word might be worse. You receive a new comm burst from a fringe diplomat, someone stationed at the edge of the Carina void. No formal title, just a signature. Shiran, independent liaison, outer core. She sends a message that reads like poetry. Trade has resumed without AI enforcement. Pirates left the sector. The threat of council patrols no longer shields corruption. The vote didn't just stop the machine. It reminded us we could say no, too. You let it sit for a while, because that's what this really is, isn't it? A reminder, not just that Earth can say no, but that everyone else can, too. For centuries, the Council convinced the galaxy that stability meant submission, that peace required control, that unity needed oversight. All good things, until oversight becomes occupation, until unity becomes silence, and then a forgotten world whispers, and the facade cracks. Some outer worlds have started calling Earth the quiet planet. Others are less poetic, referring to it simply as the veto. One graffiti scrawl captured on a passing freighter. Hull simply reads, "Earth speaks last." You're starting to believe that, too, because even now, Earth hasn't said another word. No ambassador. No demand. No presence. Just silence. And the entire galaxy is listening to it. You access a diplomatic leak, another intercepted council discussion. This time, the topic is response measures. They can't retaliate. They can't override the vote. They can't even contact Earth, not directly. Why? Because Earth hasn't maintained a council channel since the dismissal century. They left all diplomatic relays unanswered. Messages ping against the Sol system's edge like raindrops on an ancient hull. So now, the Council is paralyzed, and the rest of the galaxy? It's evolving. The biggest AI bank on Zarn recently announced they're revising their decision trees, modeling Earth-style unpredictability as a safeguard against authoritarian drift. The changelogs call it a Reyes modulator. Meanwhile, 3 mid-tier civilizations have invoked legacy review clauses, demanding the Council justify every active enforcement program currently in place. All because of that one vote, that one word. No. You used to think of Earth as a storybook, something nostalgic, a species with too much history, not enough future. But now, Earth is present in a way no fleet or diplomat could ever be. That it's not about power, it's about the power to decline. And you're not the only one who notices. Whispers come through encrypted channels. Some say there's a collective of ancient species, ones who helped found the Council, meeting in secret, reconsidering their positions, wondering if Earth's silence wasn't abandonment, but strategy. Some galactic historians believe this is a turning point. Others insist it's a glitch in the narrative. But then you read the most chilling rumor of all. The vote wasn't meant for the Council. It was a test. Earth wanted to know if the system still listened. It did, and now, Earth is listening back. The galaxy is full of noise. Ships hum, comms buzz, planets breathe in their own strange rhythms. But beneath all that, now, there's a frequency no one can ignore. Whispers of the Quiet Armada. You first see it in an anonymous report out of the Harkle Drift. A long-range scan shows something impossible. Massive mass signatures, trailing no heat, running no standard beacon codes, hovering just beyond a dark gas band. The report doesn't say fleet. It just lists unidentified artificial clusters. But you know a fleet when you see one. It's not just there, it's waiting. A second report follows, from a mining vessel skirting the edge of the Tessa Veil. They picked up a faint electromagnetic pulse, followed by a burst transmission in archaic Terran code. The message? We are not lost. We are watching. You stare at the line for a long time, and then check the code header. It's real. Pre-standardized Earth fleet signature. Something that should have burned out centuries ago, but didn't. And the reports keep coming. Cloaked signal reflections near ancient Terran outposts. Brief glimmers of heat shadows that vanish when scanned. Old-style Terran machine language bouncing. Off-council relay buoys in patterns too organized to be randomed. No official acknowledgement. Of course not. The Council can't even admit Earth still has a legal vote. How can they admit it might also have a hidden navy? But the rumors grow teeth. People start calling it the Quiet Armada. A myth at first, then a whisper, then a ghostly inevitability. A Terran force that never disbanded, just disappeared. Disconnected from the galactic net. Operating on dark code. And older loyalties. You trace the term's origin. The first mention was from a Talari merchant captain who fled the Inner Ring during the War of Nine Suns. Her logs mention human-looking ships, quiet as gravity, watching from the edge of the black. She thought it was a hallucination. You're not so sure. Because here's the pattern. Earth never responded to threats with volume. Not anymore. When they were mocked, they left. When they were excluded, they stayed silent. But they built. Gods. They built, and no one noticed. Too busy arguing over voting shares and the price of solar platinum. Too busy laughing at the primates who once thought logic was optional. You pull an old schematic from a now-defunct Terran diplomatic cache. It's a model of a proposed interstellar fleet, never approved by the Council. Too redundant. Too analog. Too human, but it was resilient and quiet, built for deep space. Not for conquest. For observation. For deterrence. You cross-check the specs with the anomalies being detected around the galaxy's edges. They match. And if the data is even half right, there's something else. Each ship seems to operate independently. No centralized AI. No command hub. Just human architecture, human encryption, and human silence. Some galactic historians argue this is impossible. That no civilization could disappear and maintain that level of force readiness without centralized command. But those historians never understood Earth, because Earth doesn't need one voice. Earth remembers stories, and some of those stories are warnings dressed as bedtime tales. You forward your findings to a private node, fully aware it might get intercepted. You don't care anymore, because whether the Quiet Armada is real or not, Its presence is already changing things. Council fleets begin running double encryption. Private militaries issue blackout response protocols. Insurance premiums for trade routes near Seoul spike by 400%. And the irony, no one from Earth has said a word in O declaration. No warning, no proof, just rumors. And yet, no one dares call the bluff. Because what if the Armada is real? What if it's watching? What if that single no was not Earth's only message, just the first tap on the glass? Some say Earth wants revenge. Others say they want recognition. But you're beginning to think all Earth wants is for everyone to remember. They never stopped being here. They just stopped talking. The message arrives without fanfare, no encryption, no security clearance, no ceremonial greeting, just a time-stamped archive ping from a backchannel that hasn't been active in over 200 years. Attached, a video file, size, 88 megabytes, format, ancient Earth standard, .mp4. How quaint, you almost don't open it. You think, this has to be a hoax. Some prankster from the outer belt with too much access and too little sense. But your instincts, honed through quiet days and long nights in cold systems, whisper otherwise. You play the file, and for the first time in this entire unraveling, Earth speaks that it's not a council delegate, not a masked AI, not a synthetic composite projection dressed up in digital gravitas, that it's a woman, old, gray, her skin creased by time, not augmentation, her voice worn like a comfortable coat. She sits in what appears to be a greenhouse. Earth, plants, recognizable even now. Tomatoes, mint, ivy climbing a rusted beam. A cat purrs softly in her lap. Genuine feline. No mods. She looks into the camera and says, "If you're watching this, then it means we finally said no." She pauses. Not for drama, just to think. I'm not alive anymore. Let's be clear about that. I'm dead. I recorded this in case the unity vote was ever cast again. In case we decided to speak. You freeze. That voice, the tone, the face. That it's Reyes, Galactic liaison. Architect of the vote clause. Dead 2 centuries, and still guiding the room. You've probably already torn your laws apart. Argued over intent. Scrambled your fleets. That's fine. I expected that. But you're asking the wrong question. It's not why we voted. It's why we waited. She leans forward, eyes sharp with a clarity that cuts deeper than any weapon. We waited because we hoped we wouldn't need to. You feel it, deep in your chest, like gravity shifting just a little. Earth has always been unpredictable, messy, loud, but we're not stupid. We saw what the council was becoming. Slowly, incrementally, peace through enforcement, harmony through oversight. She laughs, bitter and soft. We had words for that back home. Empire, colonialism, control dressed as kindness. She gestures around her, at the plants, the cat, the rusted beams. We didn't leave the galaxy. We withdrew. That's different. We watched. We listened. We cataloged every law you wrote over our absence. And we built our own paths, quiet ones you couldn't trace. Because we knew, one day you'd forget why Earth ever mattered. Another pause. The cat stretches. A hummingbird buzzes past in the background. And when that day came, we would remind you. Just once. Just enough. You realize now, this wasn't about power. It wasn't about territory or dominance. It was a principle, that a line in the sand, drawn not with weapons, but with legacy. Reyes continues, we won't invade. We won't demand. We don't need to. The vote was the warning. Don't make us speak again. And then she smiles. Not cold. Not cruel, resolute. The video ends with one final line of text, scrolling across the black. We're not coming back to the council, but we never left the galaxy. And below that, a signature, M. Reyes, Earth liaison. Human, you sit in silence. For once, the galaxy has nothing to say. Some galactic historians would call this a masterclass in passive deterrence. Others would call it political theater. But you just watched a ghost whisper a storm into stillness, and somehow, that's louder than any fleet. You sit in the silence long after the screen fades. The ship hums around you, an old vessel cradling a new truth. The vote wasn't political. It wasn't procedural. It was a line in the sand. And the galaxy, in its arrogance, had just stepped over it. You replay Reyes's words in your head, again and again, not for clarity, but because something about them keeps scratching at the inside of your mind. Not the warning, not the principle, the timing. She said Earth hoped not to speak. That the vote was a last resort. So, why now? Why measure 876C? What changed? You dig deeper, not into Earth's actions, but into the vote itself. Its authors, its backers, the chain of debates that led to it. And then you find it. A clause hidden in the measure's subtext. A small addition to the enforcement directive. Language so vague it didn't even register in most analyses. Authority to extend AI enforcement protocols into dormant systems deemed politically unstable. Dormant systems. A nice way of saying unaligned. Or worse, watching systems like Earth. Suddenly, the no isn't just opposition. It's self-defense. Because the council wasn't just aiming outward. They were about to aim inward. It wasn't just about the outer core. It was about clearing the shadows. About extinguishing anything left behind in the dark corners of the galaxy that hadn't fallen into perfect order. Earth saw it coming, and they made the first and only move they could. A single word. No, you can't help but admire it. Not for its drama, but for its restraint. 1,000 more aggressive options, and they chose the softest possible one. A vote, a whisper, a tap on the brakes before the galaxy drove off a cliff. And now, everything stopped. The council's collapse doesn't come with fire or fury. It comes with doubt, because now every system, every species, every colony starts asking, what else did we forget? What other legacy votes? What other clauses? What other sleeping powers? You pick up quiet conversations happening across borderless channels. Former fringe worlds holding secret assemblies. Ancient species opening long-locked archives. Even the AI factions begin to audit themselves, querying old protocols for buried human input they may have ignored. And amid all this, Earth says nothing. But it doesn't have to, because the signal ripple is still traveling. A small diplomatic relay station on the edge of the Inari dust cloud transmits a packet to the public net. No metadata, no explanation, just a piece of text. We were here before. The order. We remember chaos. We remember silence. We remember choice. We remain. And the source? Unity Conduit. Earth Terminal 001. Still active, still transmitting, still alive. Some galactic historians debate whether this was Earth's intention to destabilize the Council, fracture the galaxy's power structure, and rekindle an age of uncertainty. But others argue it was never about the Council at all, that Earth didn't seek revenge. Just reminder, they didn't want to shape the galaxy. They just didn't want to be erased from it. And in that small vote, so surgically precise, so deliberately timed, Earth made a bigger impact than any war ever could. It reminded the galaxy of something it had spent centuries burying under laws and light speed. The past still matters. You close your comms feed, unable to keep reading. Not out of fatigue, out of awe, because now you understand something the Council never did. Earth doesn't speak often, but when it does, it's never uncertain. You receive the ping at 4:17 shipboard time. No one good ever messages at 04:17. The packet is flagged urgent, though it arrives as nothing more than a direct thought stream, a heavily abstracted data form used only by certain AI enclaves, who believe words are too crude for nuance. You decrypt it, slowly, using a neural compression filter. The message unfolds like a dream. The consensus fracture is accelerating. Several species are pulling out of central governance. AI fleets requesting individual sovereignty. Governance mesh becoming porous. You blink. Porous in council terms, that's code for bleeding authority. Power isn't just slipping, it's leaking. And the common denominator? That single vote. The destabilization wasn't tactical, it was philosophical. The galaxy wasn't built to handle unilateral rejection. It was built on compromise, alignment, and assumption. Earth didn't break the rules. They reminded everyone the rules could be broken. You begin noticing strange symbols in fringe comnets. Graffiti, art, hashtags drifting between memes and manifestos. Most are stylized representations of Earth's vote packet signature. Some are direct quotes from Reyes's message, "We hope not to speak." Others are simpler. One has gone viral on 46 worlds. And oh, just that. Stark, capitalized, centered. On t-shirts, starship hulls, protest banners, even body mods. For the first time in centuries, resistance has a word again. A shape. A signal, not just against the council, against forgetting, against automation without meaning. Authority without consent. You run a systems trace on emergency legislative protocols. 5 species have paused all new council legislation approvals pending legacy clause review. 2 others have suspended their mesh AI governance networks, fearing latent overrides. Even more surprising, the Clore Dominion, one of the most rigid and hierarchical powers in known space, has announced a re-evaluation of its alignment with council policy. Their official statement? We recognize Earth's invocation of legacy rights as legally valid. Until we can ensure our own governance aligns with founding principles, we are suspending joint enforcement actions. The Council's reaction is a mixture of disbelief and quiet rage. You can feel it in the shift of language. Insurrection, instability, rogue precedent. But it's too late for containment, because now the debate isn't about whether Earth was allowed to vote. It's about whether the Council itself still holds moral legitimacy. It's a question no one has dared ask in 500 years, and Earth asked it without even speaking one word. And now everyone's listening. You receive another communique, this one from a research station buried in the upper clouds of Yaren 7. The sender is a lone cognitive linguist. Her message is only one sentence. The more I study that vote, the more I'm convinced it wasn't just communication, it was design. A mimetic payload. Something deeper. You ask what she means, she replies with a file. Inside, an analysis of the packet itself. The encryption wasn't just legacy, it was stylized. The framing, the tone, the metadata headers, they all echo Earth's oldest political rituals. From Terran ballots to early interstellar forums, the packet felt like a vote. It looked like a vote. It resonated like one. It triggered every protocol pathway designed to respect a founding member's voice. Even now, thousands of systems still register it as pending response. You look outside your ship's viewport. A freighter drifts past. Its hull has been painted hastily in what you first think is damage, until you recognize the pattern. We still vote. You smile. Just a little. Not because you feel triumphant, but because you feel witnessed. Earth didn't burn the council down. They just handed it a mirror. Some galactic historians call this the second silence. The moment where the galaxy finally paused again. To listen, to think, to remember. The council meets in private now. Not in the Great Chamber, not even in the Echo Cord War Dome. They meet in dark, shielded satellites scattered across neutral gravity wells, tiny enclaves where old powers whisper their regrets behind sealed breath. You know this because a contact leaks you the schedule. Half the delegates didn't even show up. The others spend more time talking about Earth than the actual legislative agenda, because Earth isn't just the problem anymore. Earth is the precedent. You skim through a transcript from one of the last semi-public sessions. The words blur together. Uncontrolled mimetic trigger, weaponized nostalgia. Legal architecture exploited by cultural artifacts. It's almost impressive. They're still trying to explain what happened with technical jargon, as if Earth hacked the galaxy instead of simply remembering how it works. And now, entire pillars of governance are crumbling. The core world's unity block, a once unbreakable alliance of 8 powerhouse civilizations, just suspended their charter. Their reason? Insufficient consensus clarity in the wake of Earth's vote. Translation: they don't trust the Council anymore. In back channels, rumors boil. The Yaldari Accord, a brutal, formerly Council-backed police network, has gone dark. Several of its AI enforcement units defected. Not shut down, not reassigned. Defected, that's a word no one expected to use for machines. And yet, here we are. One of them even left a final broadcast before severing its command link. If Earth can remember what it means to say no, so can we. You don't know whether to be terrified or deeply, deeply moved. Out here on your scout ship, far from the lights and lies, it's easier to feel the shift. The maps in your navigation database are already outdated. Borders are retracting. Routes being redefined by mutual consent instead of council enforcement. A new constellation is forming, not drawn in war, but in pause. Maybe we should think this through. In wait, do we still want this? And it all began with a vote. A word. Whispered, no. The AI on your ship finally speaks for the first time in hours, unprompted. Would you like me to archive the Earth vote message into mission protocol? You pause, then nod. Yeah, file it under primary event. Because you're no longer observing fallout that you're living in it. There's talk of the council dissolving. Some say they'll reboot it, rebrand it, restructure it, pretend this was just an era of disruption. But they all know better. The council won't die in fire. It will die in irrelevance. Because Earth didn't take its power. They just showed the galaxy it never needed permission to question power in the first place. And that spreads faster than any fleet. You stare at your console.at the vote log. Just one line. Earth // council measure 876. C // vote. And oh, still glowing, still final. And in the silence that follows, you whisper it aloud. Just once.to hear it.to feel. No, it sounds right. Some galactic historians will argue forever about what Earth meant, about whether the vote was policy, principle, protest, or poetry. But you know the truth that it was none of those. It was a reminder of who we were of. What choice means of how silence can be the loudest message of all. It ends, not with a treaty, but with acceptance, not agreement, not resolution, just a subtle, aching recognition. The council is done. You're monitoring a dozen channels at once. Council representatives resigning mid-transmission. AI moderators issuing shutdown notices. Entire planetary consulates blinking offline. Even the enforcement grids, those beautiful, terrible constellations of logic-bound power, are going dark, quietly, obediently, like dogs that were never sure what they were guarding in the first place. The last official statement comes from the council's interim chair, a Larveth diplomat named Snare, whose face never fully matches its language. The statement is only 13 words. We thank Earth for reminding us we are not entitled to obedience. It goes uncelebrated, but it's already been downloaded 2 trillion times. You receive a final ping from a private node, one of those off-grid satellites nobody officially tracks, orbiting a moon that doesn't appear on galactic maps. It's not a message. It's a stream. A live one. Your ship's AI hesitates before displaying it. But then, slowly, it unfolds. A camera, stationary, wide-angle, shows a field. Not a battlefield. Not a capital. A field. Wind over grass. Mountains in the distance. A sky so blue it hurts. There's a terminal. Small. Ancient. Rusting at the edges. The Unity conduit, still standing, still active. Beside it, a small sign. Burned into old Terran wood. Its letters faded but legible. Here we spoke once. That was enough. You exhale slowly. No drama. No finality. Just clarity. Earth won't rejoin the council. They don't need to, because now, every system has its own Unity terminal. Invisible, internal, unregistered. A place inside every civilization where the question now echoes. What if we could say no too? The galaxy doesn't fracture overnight, but it breathes. It breathes again. And Earth? They never sent another message. No demands. No fleet. Not even a thank you, because they didn't do this to be followed. They did it to be heard. And they were. Some galactic historians say Earth's real weapon was legacy. Others say it was silence. But a rare few, quiet voices in dim corners of old observatories, whisper something else. Earth wasn't trying to win. Earth was trying to remind us how not to lose. And in that way, they did, perfectly. And now, the lights aboard your ship begin to dim. Not for malfunction. Not for warning. Just for rest. You lean back in your chair, the weight of the galaxy slowly lifting. Somewhere, far beyond the stars, a terminal still hums beneath Earth's soil. But it doesn't need to be active. Not anymore. The message has already traveled. The vote has already counted. The council, once so vast, so immutable, is now just another story told around campfires in drifting ships, remembered in the quiet spaces between worlds. You look outside. The stars are still there, unafraid, unbroken, waiting, and beneath them, countless species, each now reconsidering what power means, what unity means, what silence can hold, when wielded by a species unafraid to be forgotten, but unwilling to be dismissed. You close your eyes, not out of weariness, but reverence, because in the end, the greatest force in the galaxy wasn't war. IT wasn't domination. The IT wasn't even LAW'd. IT was one small planet, long overlooked, standing. Still long enough for the universe to notice it was missing. And when they finally turned back, it simply said, "No, now sleep, traveler, the stars aren't going anywhere." And Earth? Earth is still watching.